voice of Reichman University.
Forgiveness is a decision that we make for our own sake, to cure us, me as an individual. I do it not for anyone else. Forgiveness is such a powerful feeling. It's a superpower. By forgiving, I was able to free myself from slavery, from the destiny both Hamas and the Israeli government force on me to continue the cycle of fear, hate, revenge.
Welcome to Raw, a podcast where we confront the complexities of war from the inside out. I'm Anouk, a journalist, author, yoga teacher, and meditation practitioner. Raw, or war spelled backwards, symbolizes how many of us feel in the face of the Israel-Gaza conflict, exposed, vulnerable, and seeking understanding. Here, we don't just discuss the external battles, but dive deep into our internal struggles, examining how this violence has shaken our very core. Join me in conversations with philosophers, psychologists, and spiritual leaders as we explore how to navigate these painful times with wisdom and resilience, finding guidance for our own paths through this raw, unfiltered world. Today, I'm honored to speak with Maoz Inon, a visionary entrepreneur, peace activist, and founder of transformative tourism initiatives like the Jesus Trail and Abraham Hostels in Israel. Maoz has spent his life fostering connections between people, particularly between Israelis and Palestinians, through dialogue, shared experiences, and understanding. In this conversation, Maoz shares his profound insights into the power of forgiveness, even in the face of unimaginable personal tragedy. On October 7th, Maoz's parents, Bilha and Yaakov Inon, were murdered by Hamas. Despite this, his boundless optimism and joy for life remain unshaken, and listeners will find that his resilience is not only inspiring but deeply contagious. Join us as we delve into his story, exploring why he believes forgiveness is the key to unlocking both personal and collective freedom. I think this is a conversation that will leave you moved, challenged, and hopeful. All right, Maoz, welcome.
Thank you. What a privilege to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I have been following you and hearing about you, for many months, and I feel very honored, almost a little bit nervous having you in the studio. And we were just talking, and I was saying that for me, I can really feel this energy in Israel, and I think probably in many places around the world right now, where I feel my energy being drawn towards divisiveness and polarization and us versus them and fear and anger and hatred, revenge. I mean, I'm diving straight in here. And I think there's two things. First of all, I'm trying to tell myself it's not my fault. It's not our fault. The discourse, the news, the kind of general feeling, I think, in my 39 years of existence, I don't remember it being so triggering on so many primal levels. And you asked me to tell you a bit more about the podcast, and I was explaining, that on this podcast, I try to reconnect for myself, but I hear a lot of people who have that need as well to reconnect to a different frequency. And it doesn't mean that all the horror and all that narrative isn't there, but it's just so present and all-consuming that I believe in creating spaces, and the podcast is one of these humble spaces that can reconnect to something that is just more internally peaceful. And your life work is now about peace. But what was really interesting to me is that you said you don't feel that. You don't connect to that frequency that I think 99.9% of, like, you know, whatever we're consuming content-wise is causing so many people to be so disconnected from internal peace and external peace. I mean, I would have expected that someone like you, you're so devoted to peace, and yet you're seeing the results are, I would say, not ideal, not positive. Your parents were murdered. Some of your friends were. How do you not feel what, you know, what so many of us are experiencing as this great darkness?
Yeah. So first I can feel you. And what you feel is real. But I'm living now in a different place. I went through a spiritual transformation in the last 13 months, and I'm already living in the future. And I decided to anchor myself to the future and not to the past. So I'm living in the future. I'm as happy, as productive, as creative as ever, even though I cry a few times a day. But I don't let, I thrive on my tears. I use them as a tool, as a power, and I don't let it drown me. What I can also tell you, the demand for hope, for a better future, and for forgiveness is rising. Just today, I started my day in a webinar with Israeli audience and hosts that already got thousands of views online. I met Jonathan Zeigen, the son of the late Vivian Silver.
I interviewed him on the show
Okay,
as well.
he's the cutest guy ever. And later on tonight, there are two events happening in Tel Aviv. One by Geneva Initiative to envision the political future on horizon, much better horizon. And from there, Acropolis, it's an NGO of philosophers that are doing an evening, and they title it Envisioning Hope or Creating Hope. So that's only one day. And all my day and night, this is the atmosphere and the ecosystem I live within. I don't listen to news. I don't read the news. I'm investing my time and energy only in places that are positive and empowering. So, and I'm using those muscles, and I train those muscles of hope, of forgiveness, of a better future. This is how I'm able to live in the future, even though the present is devastating. Is the most deadliest year in 100 years of conflict. Most life were lost in this year, and it didn't start on October 7th. It didn't start in 67, 48. It started about a century ago. And what I believed just after losing my parents, I believed that peace is possible. I believed in that just after it happened. But now I know. I know that it's possible. And now I'm just acting to make it into a reality.
So I want to go back to that, you know, to that day that you understood that your parents had been killed. If you can take us through that, and then tell us who was Maoz before and who is Maoz since then. You say you now live in the future, a future that you imagine is possible of peace and reconciliation. And was that also the case before? Take us through that arc.
Yeah, I'll take you. I'm now 49 years old. I was born in Kibbutz Niram. It's about a kilometer and a half from the border in Gaza. My grandparents established this kibbutz from my father's side. From my mother's side, they established Kibbutz Ruchama. All my grandparents were Zionist pioneers immigrating to Palestine, and the British managed to build a safe and secure homeland to the Jewish people. They were a true Zionist. And when my parents got married, they moved to live at my father's kibbutz, where they raised my three sisters, my young brother, and myself. My father was the manager of the farm of the kibbutz. And for 60 years, my father used to sow wheat in the land of the Negev in Israel. And it doesn't matter how devastating the year before was. If it's because of floods, drought, insects, heat waves, or cold wave. He was always sharing how difficult and devastating the situation in the farm, in the field is, but at the same sentence he will state, next year I'm going to sow again. Next year I'm going to sow wheat again, because next year will be a better year. But it's up to me. I have the agency to make it better. I cannot predict the future, but I can change it. I will learn from my mistakes. I will consult with other farmers. I will get the best seeds. I will fertile the land. I will do everything to make it better. And like I shared with you, I went through a spiritual transformation. So in one of those days, I was able to look inside my DNA. What is written there? And what is written there is exactly what my father taught me. The future is going to be better. But it's up to you, Maoz, to make it better. So as I was growing up in this kibbutz, and at the age of 14, we've decided to move out from the kibbutz to Netiv HaAsara. It's the closest Israeli community to the border with Gaza. And my parents built their home 200 meters from the border. And like to summarize my first 3 decades on planet Earth, at the age of 30, I was already in 10 years partnership with Shlomit, the mother of my kids, and I already traveled twice around the world, and I walked the Israel National Trail, and we said we know about indigenous communities and native communities in New Zealand, in Australia, in Asia, in South America, but we don't have even one Palestinian friend. We don't know the difference between Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr, and Ramadan. We didn't know where Jesus was born, where he's buried, and heard nothing about the Annunciation. So we said we are at the age of 30. We lived all our life inside a wall between us and the Palestinians and the Arabs and the Muslims, a physical wall and wall of ignorance. And we have decided to broken this wall and to use tourism, which we experience while traveling and backpacking around the world, can be an amazing tool to create bridges and understanding and shared vision and empowering local communities. So at the age of 30, we've decided to open the first guest house ever in the old city of Nazareth. Nazareth is the largest Palestinian city within Israel. And in 2005, there was zero, nada, nothing. And we opened the first guest house, and we were followed by more than 50 entrepreneurs, mostly female entrepreneurs from the community that opened guest houses, family stays, boutique hotel, Airbnbs, galleries, coffee shop, and we didn't just become part of the community, we became part of the leaders of the community. And then with other Israeli entrepreneurs, we co-founded and established Abraham Jerusalem, Abraham Tel Aviv, Abraham Tours, who operated in Israel, Palestine, in Jordan, Abraham Eilat. And just before October 7th, I co-founded with a Palestinian from Nazareth, Khulud Abu Ahmed, a political and social activist. We co-founded a sister company to Abraham that was called Abraham Alternative Tours, that allowing local community share their narrative and empowering local community, promoting shared life and shared future, and supporting small businesses and activists. And we were just about to scale our operation in Bnei Brak, in Tel Aviv, in the Bedouin community, in a kibbutz. And then October 7th happened. But even before October 7th, I was always preaching that the first step in reaching a shared society is knowing the other side narrative. We must know the other side narrative, his pain, his challenges, his agony, his suffering, and also dreams and aspiration. We don't need to agree. And there is no point in arguing or debating, because then another 100 years of conflict will continue. We just need to put it on the table, look on it, and start dialoguing on that. So when October 7th happened, it's more than a year. I shared it already, so many places, and I'm not leaving the day. I'm not leaving October 7th. It will always be with me, and of course my parents are always with me. But I'm not focusing my story or our time in what happened to Maoz's parents on October the 7th. They're dead. They were killed, they were murdered. My narrative by the Hamas, with many others. But what is important, or maybe unique, It took my young brother 2 days to ask the family to share a universal message that we are seeking no revenge. We don't want to revenge the death of our parents, because by revenging them, we're not going to bring them back to life. We're just going to escalate the cycle of death, of fear, of hate that has been going on for too long, for at least a century. We want to break this cycle. And on that same night, I had a dream. And in my dream, I could see the path to peace. I could see it like I can see you now. And I've decided to follow this path. Not just to make peace around the world or between the river to the sea, but to make peace within myself. Because I was drowning. From the moment we heard my parents are gone, it was Saturday afternoon, I was drowning in an ocean of sorrow and pain. It's not words. I was literally drowning, and I was broken into pieces, thousands of pieces. And I've decided that in order to heal myself, to cure myself, I must choose this path. And this is the path I've been going now for more than a year. And on this path, I learned that I need to take the action my father used to do. For 60 years, he was sowing wheat, and he harvested at the spring or after the spring. And now it's our turn, my turn, to sow 3 seeds: the seeds of hope, the seeds of the future, and the seeds of forgiveness. And if we'll all, or many of us, will sow it now, we're gonna harvest peace by 2030. That's the time frame. In less than 6 years, there's gonna be peace between the river to the sea. And it's up to us. We have the agency to make it happen. And this is what I'm doing now.
What do you think makes the difference between someone like you who, was able in their heart to forgive and not to be consumed by anger and revenge, and some other people who might be, like you said, still kind of drowning in that difficulty accepting and desire to hurt back, and there are such human feelings. What makes the difference? Is it your upbringing? Is it your your temperament? Is it your essence? Is it your parents? You said your father was a farmer and always mentioning how next year he would succeed and had that optimism. Your mother was an artist and a dreamer.
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you think makes you so able to live this ideal of peace, internal and external, where other people might have a much harder time?
So you said it. Basically, it was my parents. My parents prepared me and my siblings to the moment of their death. And when it happened, we knew exactly what to do, what to say and how to act. My father, that implement in each cell in my body that the future is going to be better. And my mom, that was an artist. She was very creative. We just learning now more and more about how creative and productive she was. And when we opened Abraham Tel Aviv, she gave me a mandala. It was the only mandala she ever gave me. She painted thousands of mandalas. And in that mandala, she painted all our dreams can be fulfilled if we have the courage to chase them. And when she gave it to me in 2016, I thought it was meaning about Abraham Hostel and making Abraham brand, their network
to become
international
businessman.
Yeah, exactly. This was my dream back then. But after seeing the path to peace in my dream, I realized this is now my new dream that I can and must fulfill, because this is my mother teaching that we can fulfill all our dreams if we have the courage to chase them. And it's also, there is a phrase in Hebrew, and we'll translate it. I think it was Hillel from the Sanhedrin said, "Be the students of Aaron, the brother of Moses, asking and chasing for peace." So peace is not something we can just ask or pray. Religious Jewish who practice Judaism and praise, they pray for peace few times a day, but it's not enough. We must chase peace. We must be active to make it happen and to fulfill this dream. And my mom gave me the ability to do so. And after working and building partnership, friendship with Palestinians for more than 20 years, the level of humanism that I was able to build between me and so many Palestinians, that I see them just as I see myself. And I have Palestinian friends that are as good friends as my Jewish, Israeli, or whatever friends I have. And the amount of support we received from Palestinians after October 7th, it was on WhatsApp, just as we heard, or published it on our social media. It was a Palestinian who came to the Shiva, and because many Palestinians with Israeli ID were afraid, it was very fearful to travel within Israel just after October 7th. There were many police and stops and blockage. So many Palestinian friends were afraid to come. So we even done a wake ceremony to my parents in Nazareth. Hundreds of Palestinians from Nazareth, from the Galilee, people who are in the market of Nazareth, political leaders, people that we didn't know. They came and they hugged and they cried with us. So I knew I have partners. And there is no difference between the Palestinians who lives in Gaza nowadays or who live in Nazareth. It's the same people. Many of them were refugees. They were displaced in 48. Some were displaced to Nazareth and some were displaced to Gaza, but it's the same people. And we are the same. We are all human. And we need to humanize each other in order to build a better future. So I knew already that we have partners.
When I hear you speak, I realize how much, we were talking in the beginning about how I can feel the energy, especially in Israel, being extremely divisive. We are living in kind of existential fight or flight. And it's so clear when you're speaking that you're not there at all, probably by virtue of being so actively involved in peace initiatives and working with Palestinian colleagues and friends and being involved in something so noble and ennobling all the time is it's almost like I'm looking at a bubble from the outside. I see you being in this bubble where you can understand and feel in your body that peace is possible. You're living it. But the majority of people, like we were saying, aren't, because news is so loud and the military and the divisiveness, the discourse is so powerful that voices like yours, they're like a whisper,
No,
they're like...
No, they are not. We have a roadmap, and in this bottle, I brought it here.
You came with a sesame oil
Sesame
bottle.
oil. There is the formula how we're going to make peace.
In your bottle?
There is. But let's leave it to the end. Okay, there is a formula. It's 5-step formula, very straight and simple. How to make peace. Okay, so we leave that for the end.
So you're telling me all my skepticism, just throw it out the window.
No. Yes.
It's in this bottle right here.
Leaders cannot be skeptical or cynical. It's a virtue that leaders cannot adopt. Yesterday, we mentioned the 47th anniversary for President Sadat visiting to Israel. It was yesterday.
The former Egyptian president who made
peace.
Yes.
And before he came to Israel, it was only 4 years after the Yom Kippur War, only 40 years. The discourse was exactly as you described now. The majority of the Jewish Israeli were against negotiation with Egypt, were in the notion that Egypt want to erase the Jewish existence here in the state of Israel, and that it's better to have Sinai Peninsula without peace than peace without Sinai Peninsula. This was the discourse. And Golda and other generals stated that there will be no peace in our generation. That's what they stated. And Anwar Sadat arrived, and Menachem Begin, our former prime minister, from the Likud, Menachem Begin said, we can prevent the war, but we cannot prevent peace. Peace will definitely happen. And the children of Israel that were in shelter during the Yom Kippur War, it was only 4 years after, the children of Israel waved to Saadat cars in the streets of Jerusalem, in the streets of Haifa, in the streets of Tel Aviv and Beersheba. They were waving the flag of Egypt, Israel's biggest enemy till that day. And 2 years after peace was signed, and this is with Jordan, this is the border where we are secure and safe. And for our non-Israeli audience, if I would need to tell you what Israelis want the most, what do we think about, what we need? We are traumatized, a traumatized nation, traumatized people, and we need secure and safety. This is what we need, security and safety. And the only way to achieve security and safety is through conflict resolution and diplomatic arrangement. It can never be achieved by war. And those who believe that bombs will bring quiet, that wall will defend, and that war will bring security, they are naive, because it's been failing so many times. So my voice, and this voice is growing, and I can prove it, it's growing. We are the voice of reason.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to Raw on your favorite podcast platform, leave a review, and share it with someone who might find it meaningful. You can also explore more about the show and subscribe to my newsletter at withanouk.com. Many of our listeners who are not watching the videos can't see, but you're pretty much, smiling. From the moment you arrived, you are smiling, and you're smiling as you're talking, and you have this contagious energy. And again, I want to go back because I think it's so important. There's so many people, who are so deeply wounded, who are so deeply traumatized. The idea of peace does not feel safe, because in order to step towards peace, you have to take some risks. And a lot of people are still so afraid of letting go, opening themselves up to risk. What do you say to them, to those people who say, who is there on the other side? Show me the leaders on the other side. I've heard Israelis like you speaking, but I have not heard enough Palestinian voices, or, and then they talk about Islamic fundamentalism, etc. I want to give a voice to those people because they're not bad. They're not evil. Yeah, no one is. There are just more traumatized people and less traumatized people.
First, I don't argue with anyone and with no one. Everyone are legitimate to think what they think and to live the trauma. I'm not arguing with no one. And I'm not trying to prove that I'm right and they are wrong. We're all right. I'm modeling the future. And many of my talks, when we opened the TED convention, met Pope Francis, I'm doing most of my things, public speaking, with Palestinian partners. I want to say what I learned even before October 7th, that the biggest cure for trauma is finding a meaning. This is the biggest cure for trauma. It doesn't matter if it's through violence, through war, or illness. If you find a meaning, you find a reason to start the day and to make the future better. And I want again to share about my grandparents from my mother's side. They established Kibbutz Ruchama in 1944. They immigrate in HaShomer HaTzair movement, leaving their parents and their family in Europe. And it was the first attempt to establish Kibbutz Ruchama. The first three failed. And they were the fourth attempt. And while their parents, family, friends disappeared, literally disappeared in the Holocaust, being genocide, they didn't lose hope. They didn't give up. They didn't leave the trauma. They made hope. Hope is an action. It's not something you can lose or find or someone else will give you. Hope is an action we do together by envisioning a better future and acting to make it into a reality. It's that simple. This is exactly what my grandparents done. They envision a better future to the Jewish people, and they act to make it into reality, and they succeeded amazingly. And this is what we are doing now, creating hope for both people, Palestinian and Israelis, because no one is going nowhere. There are 7 million Palestinians, 7 million Israelis. And now that's what needs to be done. And there are more and more individuals and organizations that are doing it now. Like I mentioned, the webinar this morning and Geneva Initiative, and tomorrow there is a foundation named for Vivian Silver. They are going to give a prize. And there is the Woodstock happening, a group of female activists that are creating Woodstock for peace in Shittim in the Arava at the end of December. And there is It's Time Coalition, a coalition of more than 50 civil society organizations, Palestinian Israelis, that we've done a huge peace event in July 1st, and we are doing 5-day rally from the north to the south, and we're going to do a huge multi-location peace event in the first week of April between the Eid al-Fitr and Passover. So you cannot make hope by sitting on the couch and watching TV. Join us.
It definitely sounds like you're not sitting on the couch and watching TV.
No. And that's happening like mushrooms after the rain. And more. So the peace movement is growing, is getting more power, more popularity, and legitimacy.
Before October 7th, you were working in the tourism industry, which is doesn't necessarily make for becoming a gazillionaire, but you were working. You have all these hostels, tour groups, etc. And now you seem to be doing peace work pretty much all of the time. How does that work financially?
First, it's working amazing, and I never care about money. I really don't care about money. But for example, we were signed by Crown Publishing House on a major deal. This is how they call it. I won't say the number, but they consider it as a major deal for writing a book. Aziz Abu Sarah and myself, we are now writing a book together. So there is money in peace.
And what's happening with all your other projects? Your hostel in Nazareth and Abraham hostels all around Israel, and you used to guide also some tours. You founded the Jesus Trail. What's happening with all of that?
So I quit. I quit the board. I'm not part. I have my shares, but I just don't care. Seriously, I don't care about business. I care just about peace. And I do guide tours and inviting Israelis and foreigners and a lot of diplomatics and foreign media to join my tours in Nazareth. I do it once a month in Hebrew or in English, where I share my vision, where I came from, and we meet the activists from Nazareth. And Nazareth is just a great example, not just because it's the Big Bang of Christianity, where St. Gabriel is announcing Mary that she'll give birth to the Son of God and the Messiah. It shows that when you take the walls down, you raise security and safety. Because the people who live in Nazareth, their grandparents or great-grandparents, were refugees in 48. Just like the people in Gaza and in Jenin and in Hebron. But there are no walls there. There is no security forces. There is no IDF. There is no Magav. And when we are able to dialogue and start looking to each other in the eye and see each other as human, then we create security and safety. And Nazareth is the best model, I think, between the river to the sea, how it can be done. So I got every month, and it's like just registration fee, like $15, $15 for a full day tour. Everyone are welcome to come and join.
You mentioned that after October 7th, you forgave Hamas, and you said that the reason you could forgive was because you knew Hamas to be, terrorist organization, and you wouldn't have expected something else, but you had expected your government to protect your parents, and that you did feel anger at the government after October 7th for not protecting your parents and for in some ways enabling Hamas, etc. And eventually you managed to forgive them. You say it comes back to that idea of focusing on the future and not on the past. but in many ways the government is continuing to act in ways that are in complete contradiction to what you believe in. How do you deal with that internally? Do you feel anger when you hear about, what's going on and, the divisiveness with which so many governments around the world, and ours as well, are leading? How do you work with that anger or, rise above it?
Okay. Anger is very legitimate feeling, and it can be a great motivation. We can use anger like a nuclear power for distraction and killing, or to make light and energy. But for me personally, I have no anger within inside of me, but I was, like you said, seeking revenge in the Israeli government. And then after hearing Hamza Awad, another amazing Palestinian peace activist.
Who was also on this podcast.
Hamza was here.
Yes.
I love Hamza.
Not here because he, I don't think he can make it into Israel these days, but he was on the podcast.
Okay. So Hamza is my teacher. Is my teacher for peace. And after I heard Hamza saying that he is willing to forgive for the past and the present, but not the future, that's when I shift and decided to forgive the Israeli government, and stated also that I'm forgiving Hamas. And again, forgiveness is a decision that we make for our own sake, to cure us, me as an individual. I do it not for anyone else. Forgiveness is such a powerful feeling. I think it's a superpower. By forgiving, I was able to free myself from slavery, from the destiny both Hamas and the Israeli government forced on me to continue the cycle of fear, hate, revenge. And I was locked in a prison cell. And I was very alone there. I'm just thinking about this feeling and I start crying. I was very alone there. And it was killing me from the inside. It was eating me, being in this prison cell. And after using the key of forgiveness, I become free. Free and happy. And I want to offer this key to anyone who is listening. And it's your decision if you want to use this or not.
So tell me about this little bottle of sesame oil that you have here, and you're talking about this desire for peace. What are the actual practical steps? How do you change, the internal storyline of millions of people who live in this region and, like you say, deeply dehumanize one another, primarily out of fear and wounding? What do you suggest? What do you offer?
Before going to the formula, I want to tell you which myth we must break and declare as a false myth the Greek myth of the monster Medusa. And by the Greek mythology, every human that look in the Medusa eye will die or become a stone. And this is false. It's false. It's a lie. The only way to kill a monster, it's not by beheading her, not by bombs or drowning her. It's only by looking to her in the eye. Because if we would look in the Medusa eye, in the monster eye, and start dialoguing with her and hearing her narrative, we would learn she wasn't born a monster. Medusa wasn't born a monster. She was born a beautiful, beautiful Greek girl who was raped in the temple of Athens by the god Poseidon. Her trauma wasn't treated, wasn't healed. On the contrary, she was cursed by Athens for a crime she didn't perform. It was Poseidon who made the crime, but she was cursed and she became a monster. But if we will start dialoguing and look to her in the eyes, we'll humanize her back again to be the beautiful Greek girl she was. But we're not just gonna humanize her, we're gonna humanize us. In each one of us, there is the monster and the human. Each one of us, doesn't matter, Israeli, Palestinian, Belgian, American, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, or Bai, or Hindu. Each one of us is a human being with a monster and humanity. We can choose which one we want to adopt and live on his values. And in this sesame battle is the formula for peace. And another story, of course, come with it. My father was the best farmer in Israel. It's a fact, okay? I'm not saying it because I'm his son. You will ask any farmer, everyone in the Hebrew University, in Faculty of Agronomy will tell you, Jacobi, the best farmer in Israel. And his partner, Asaf, who was my classmate, in 2008, my father was invited to go on an agriculture tour in Ethiopia. My father couldn't make it, he sent Asaf. And Asaf is coming back, and he's telling my father that in Ethiopia they cultivate millions of dunam. It's like few millions of acres. It's huge land where they cultivate sesame. It produces only 30-35 kilo per dunam, which is basically nothing, and they harvest it by hand. By hand. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians go to the fields to harvest the sesame. And then my Asaf and my father said it's impossible. How come? It's now 21st century. So they start dreaming about an imaginary sesame variety that humanity was never able to achieve. Peace we achieved so many times. Even the Hutu and the Tutsi in Rwanda, who genocide 1 million between themselves. But the sesame that will be harvested by a machine was never achievable. So they say, okay, they had a dream, and they say, okay, what are values going to be? High nutrition ingredients, will be able to cultivate it here in Israel, resilience for climate change, high production of sesame, and to be harvested by a machine, combined harvester. And we also have the values of the future. This is the seeds of the future where both Palestinian and Israeli meet, even though nowadays we are as far as ever from each other. Yes, I see the same reality as everyone who is listening to us see, but we meet in the future that is based on equality and dignity, shared acknowledgement and recognition, reconciliation and healing, security and safety. Those are the values of the future. And they had their values for the sesame oil, and then you cannot achieve a big dream by your own. You must build a coalition. So they built a very strong and powerful coalition. Universities, research centers, farmers, professors, very strong coalition. And this is exactly what we are doing now. I believe you are part of my coalition and your audience. We are building a coalition. Israeli, Palestinian, and international coalition that will achieve peace. We cannot do it on our own. We can't. And then you must have a roadmap. So my father and Asaf, they wrote a roadmap to achieve how they will cultivate this imaginary variety of sesame. And on their roadmap, they reached to the year 2025. They thought it will take them more than 15 years to achieve this dream. And then they executed. You cannot achieve anything if you don't execute it. And they executed, and they were a year and a half ahead of time. Only 2 weeks after October 7th. For the first time ever, here in Israel, the sesame variety, Jacobi, named after my father, was harvested, producing 200 kilo per dunam, nearly 8 times more than what they started. This is the formula. Dream, values, coalition, roadmap, and execution. So we have the dream, we have the values, we are building the coalition. The roadmap is getting bigger and bigger as we move forward. So the roadmap we have now is to dream. Again, it's going back to the dream. We must dream for a better future. Okay? While all our politicians lost their political imagination. They are envisioning us that the future will be as devastating as the present. And this is unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. It doesn't matter right or left. All our politicians must envision us a better future and to prove how they're going to achieve it. So we're dreaming of a better future. We amplify our voices. Yes, peace is possible. If we were able to reconcile with the German people who genocide 40% of our people, can't we reconcile with Palestinians? Of course we can. And then we must call for a policy change. We are telling the world, we don't need your prayers, we don't need your thoughts, we don't even need you to cross your finger for us, like President Biden was doing so generously for us. We need you to act. The amount of money that goes to weapons, nuclear and defense is nearly 100 times more budget than budget that goes to reconciliation and shared life and shared society. So if you sow weapon, we're going to harvest war. But if we sow peace, reconciliation, hope, we're going to sow much better future for everyone. So policy change, and then to create the political will and power to make peace. Leaders that will go into politics to build a movement, a global movement that works together towards peace.
You've met with international politicians. You met Pope Francis. Are there politicians here in Israel? Are there politicians in Palestine who have been willing at this time to meet with you or with your Palestinian partners for peace? Or is this, at this stage, only happening outside of this region?
So there are some meetings. Also, we had Gilad Kariv and Naama Lazimi that attended the July 1st convention. It's time event. We might have a meeting with the Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, coming soon. Unfortunately, our politicians, we have no leaders. Our politicians are frightened. They are frightened. They are not creating the discourse. They are following the discourse. They are following those calls for revenge, for war, for more bloodshed and fear. And they are afraid to look to the other side in the eye. They are living by the Greek mythology of Medusa. And we need to help them break this myth, to start looking to the other side in the eye. And there was no negotiation, no dialogue between Israeli to Palestinian leadership, I think, for 15 years. So there is no dialogue, there is war. And this is also the lesson we learned from Pope Francis. For an hour and a half, he was preaching about the importance of the conflict. And we were shocked. We don't want conflict. We want to live in harmony. And he said, no. Conflict is how humanity rise, how we evolve. We evolve through conflict. And in a place there is no conflict, it means there is oppression and a dictatorship. We must embrace the conflict, not to build a wall between us, not to erase it, not to silence it, to embrace the conflict, and then to choose dialogue, because we, humans, are the only creature on planet Earth that can choose to solve a conflict through a dialogue and not through war.
What energizes you in your daily life? Is it, are you devoting all your time to this? Do you have hobbies or other things that you do that keep you energized and give you this strength that you so clearly have?
So it's very easy for me because I'm in my zone. I'm doing what I was taught and told by ancestors. But the most difficult thing is to balance between the mission and the family. Shlomit and I are together now for nearly 30 years. We are proud parents of Liad, 19, Dor, 17, Eden, 30. And to balance between this great mission and home is the most challenging thing. So now I'm not flying more than once a month and trying not more than 4 days, so 3 nights. Every night I'm making dinner. I'm making dinner beside 1 night a week that I'm allowed to speak outside.
What are you planning for dinner tonight?
Tonight is the night I'm not making dinner. But it's very simple, like salad and avocado and toast and fried egg and maybe vegetables in the oven. It's very simple, but this is it's a family tradition, and we took it from my parents. We always had family dinners. Always, every evening.
You mentioned your kids and you mentioned their ages, and of course, every parent in Israel knows what those ages means. It's military, it's either being in the military or military draft, or how has your family navigated that in light of your, very active peace work?
So we are trying to do exactly what my parents done, to support and be there for each and every decision we are taking. So we are trying to practice the same with our kids. What they decide, it's their decision, and we'll back them. So my eldest son just started the pre-army course doing programming. So it's the second week already. So he's there, like cyber and learning cyber and programming. And again, and the 17 will need to decide what he wants to do, and we will be there for him. And the same with our daughter. We are there.
Do your Palestinian friends ever ask you about that? Ever say, how can you, send your kids? I mean, because, around the world, those who are against Israel are primarily deeply dehumanizing and delegitimizing anyone who might be in the IDF, which is eventually all our children if, this reality continues. How do you talk to your friends about, or do you talk to your friends about that? Possibility that your children will be serving in the army that they, feel is oppressing and killing, in Gaza, tens of thousands?
It's a great question. I'm not sending my kids. He's going. I cannot force him or tell him what to do. I could immigrate outside of Israel and then maybe a few years ago, and then he wouldn't be drafted. But I've decided, and I'm here. I'm here to stay. I'm here to fix and to offer a new alternative, a new path. It's their decision.
Maoz, thank you so much for taking the time, for coming here. I think I'm going to decide to leave our listeners with your optimism because, I could continue to prod and to, inject some questioning and potential cynicism. But I think there's so much of that. The discourse is so saturated with that and with not possibles. And you are such a strong voice for possible, for, already imagining the kind of most beautiful outcome that could happen, that I'm just going to leave them with that. And, is there one final thing that you'd like to leave our listeners with, other than what you said? Whatever, a joke.
Usually when I speak with Aziz tells the joke and I make everyone cry. So I have no joke. But it's 3 words that I want you to take. Peace is possible. Peace is possible. Humanity proved it, and we're going to prove it again. And it's up to you. Amplify the voices. If you must choose a side, choose the side of the peacemaker. Because if you choose one side, pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, you are right and you're choosing the right side, but you are ensuring the conflict will continue. The bloodshed will continue. The suffering will continue. If you want to end the bloodshed and the suffering, choose the peacemaker, choose peace, and join us in our coalition, in our movement, amplify our voices. And we are very reachable, all social media, WhatsApp, phone, interviews. Be with us. Together we can make it.
So thanks again. And I think we'll continue this dialogue.
Amazing. Amazing.
Toda rabba.
Thank you. Shukran. Toda.
Shukran. That's it for today. Thank you for listening to Raw. You can subscribe on any podcast platform and join our community at withanouk.com. Share this episode if it resonated with you, and I'll see you next time.